Well, I think we'll start with the easiest and most obvious question, and that would be your general reaction to being nominated for a Juno, your fourth nomination, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I mean it was a surprise. I knew that we work with Universal Label, a record company. I have my own label, so it's a little label working with a bigger label, and I knew that they had submitted this recording for consideration for nomination. I forgot about it all while during Christmas and everything. So it came about in a very surprising way, but I'm grateful, of course.
Just some thoughts on receiving this nomination so relatively soon after the announcement that you would be getting inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame this spring. It's kind of been bang, bang, good news for Loreena McKennitt.
Yeah, yeah. You wonder, boy, I must be getting old. Do they think I'm going to die? No, it's always wonderful to be acknowledged by your profession. You know, I'm sure you would be the same. Um, yeah, it's not, when you're about doing what you do, my biggest goal is that it has meaning in people's lives. I've never pursued a career in music for fame or anything else, but rather I've been very, very lucky that it chose me and that it's allowed and afforded me a life of doing something that is very rich in meaning. And it's whether it's my research of the history of the Celts, but in the process of doing that, learning about people around the world, about humanity, how we're all the same, really, at the end of the day. And then to weave that back into my music and hopefully have some of those reflections woven into the music and that people connect and relate. I become this conduit, really, for these experiences.
So the album that you've been nominated for, The Road Back Home, it was released in March of last year, and you've been nominated for Best Traditional Roots Album of the Year. I find the background of how the album came together pretty interesting in the sense that, it was recordings at festivals and it was kind of a last-minute decision to do that. So just tell us how it all kind of came together initially.
Well, I think, for folks to understand that over the past, I don't know, 3 decades or so, I've pursued the history of the Celts and have traveled all over the world in researching that. And I've worked with a collection of musicians that really don't live on the most part, live in Canada. One lives in Toronto, the rest are in the States and Europe and so on. So over the years, when we've been touring in the summer, we've been touring in Europe, but in the meantime, I've been asked to perform at some of the more local folk festivals, which I started off in Winnipeg at the Winnipeg Folk Festival, and I have a very, very fond place in my heart for them. And I thought, well, the only way I'm going to be able to perform at these festivals, I think, would be to, maybe not the only way, but one of the ways would be to join forces with this local Celtic band called the Bookends. And they play guitar, banjo, bouzouki, whistle, boran. They're all the traditional instruments. So I said, well, why don't we work up a 60-minute set? And these festivals that have been inviting me over the years, I can finally say yes. And I will do some songs and you'll do some jigs and reels and we'll kind of do it like that. So because everybody lives here in Stratford, it was just so easy to rehearse, unlike my other team. And as we got close to the festivals, I thought, we better record these, even if just for posterity. It's something I do for almost all my tours and performances. I have a whole archive of our different performances. But I thought, just in the off chance we make this into a commercial recording, we'll do it to that standard. So we recorded the various performances at the festivals, and then when we got to the stage of assembling the material, we chose what we felt were the best performances of each of those songs from those folk festivals. So yeah, it was kind of an afterthought, making this recording so that it should end up being nominated. It's just, it's kind of it's just like my whole career. I kind of set off with one intention, but something even better happens.
With the title The Road Back Home, it certainly elicits in my mind that there may be some thoughts of home and getting back to your roots. Would you
Yeah.
say that is something that's reflected in this project?
Very much so. I think of, the years that I was living in Morden, I wasn't familiar with the Celtic music. I loved folk music. I was interested in Joni Mitchell and Gordon Lightfoot and so on. But it wasn't until I moved to Winnipeg, I took my grade 12 at a girls' school there. And in that year, I started learning about these folk clubs and but also this collection of people that had come from Ireland, Scotland, and England, who were gathering at a woodwright's shop on Main Street in Winnipeg on Sunday nights. And I would join them, and we would learn songs from each other. We would share albums. We would in between time we would go to each other's place and listen to the albums. There'd be groups like Steel Eyed Span or Planksty Bothy Band, the Chieftains, some groups that many people might not know if they're not into the Celtic world, but. So that really, that's when I really fell in love with the Celtic sound. But it was only after that I thought, I'd like to learn more about the historical context of this folk music. And that was started the road of studying the history of the Celts and traveling to Ireland. But those years in Winnipeg, at that folk group club on Sunday nights. And then, of course, leading into the Winnipeg Folk Festival, when Mitch Podolak started that festival, he had asked me to perform at it, which was really one of my earliest, I would say, significant professional opportunities.
Now, one of the songs that's included on The Road Back Home is one that I think a lot of folks that enjoy your particular style of music will be familiar with, Wild Mountain Thyme. Many artists have recorded it over the years, and I understand that the reception to this song over the course of the many festivals you played with the set we've discussed was really positive. So why did you decide to one, include that song in the set, and two, ultimately in the album?
One point was divining that wonderful moment at the end of the Winnipeg Folk Festival each year. And the artists would come up on the stage and they'd join hands and we'd collectively sing Wild Mountain Thyme together. And of course, the audience would join in too. It was this kind of act of a solidarity, of a communal kind of experience. And as the years have gone on, I've been very concerned that as music seems to have disappeared from people's lives, learning music, playing it together, listening to it together, and so on. I wanted to, as a kind of proactive step, is do that piece and invite the audience to sing with us, just as done in the Winnipeg Folk Festival. When we were up in Owen Sound, at their festival there, James Keelahan is the artistic director. And James, of course, has performed at the Winnipeg Folk Festivals and is a very prominent singer in his own right. And he's now the artistic director. So I said that night when we got there, I said, James, would you be open to singing a verse of Wild Mountain Thyme with us in that kind of sense of back in the day? So he joined us. So for me, that was very special. But of course, as the verses would go on, I would hear the audience singing, and poof, it was just really special.
Getting back to the title of the album, The Road Back Home, I for some reason I was struck to ask you this question this morning. And at this point in your life, and the fact that you have literally traveled tens of thousands of miles around the world over the course of your career, how do you define home now, Loreena?
Well, it's interesting because when I was working on my on the recording An Ancient Muse, this subject of home really came into view in my mind. That home is much more than the building that you go to at the end of the day and you sleep and so on, but rather a home is that community in which you live and those people that you may see even briefly every single day that form the fabric of your life. I think even the lady where I still read a newspaper. I stop at the shop every morning and I buy my newspapers. And the previous owner, when she spoke Arabic, so when I'd stop to collect my newspapers, she'd be teaching me some few words of Arabic. But that moment, just that 3 minutes in that shop, became this broader concept of home. But also, the home is those rituals and traditions and festivals that come annually through the year, that also help inform who you are. And certainly, I felt like attending the Winnipeg Folk Festival was one of those annual events. And as I would come to meet people who volunteered, they took their holidays every year and they volunteered. It was extraordinary, but it became part of their greater sense of home, I think. So when we're looking for a title for this recording, given that the music that is captured in this recording really for me goes back to those earliest years in Manitoba, and those years, more in Winnipeg in that folk club, they were part of my sense of being home.
We'll wrap up with this question today, Loreena. Obviously, we're talking about your fourth Juno nomination for the album "The Road Back Home." We already mentioned, and we actually spoke with you at much more length about your impending induction into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame. You certainly have had a prolific and successful career, however we choose to define success. At this point, what continues to drive you to create and to push you into different areas?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, I love very much what I do in the musical side, and the creative side. I've really cherished the privilege to travel around the world and meet different people and different cultures. And again, recognizing just how much we have in common at the end of the day of being loved and self-determination and so on, and sharing that with people. And I think that for me, the definition of success is, does my life have meaning? It's not like how much money or how much fame or any or whatever. It really is it's infused with meaning. Now we've just finished another year of touring internationally, and our attendances were in, these were the arts halls of the world. We're sitting at 90%. So there still is a great appetite to hear us perform, and which also I think says people are needing it to hear a particular kind of music, not just my music, but a certain kind of music, maybe in this day. But I would also add that there is a whole other civic side of my life, that this career also helps fuel and engage. Right now, we're in the thick of a campaign called Canadians Standing Together. And I've written an op-ed piece that has just been printed in the Devoir and so on. And so, what fuels me, what inspires me, is being a citizen as well. So, there's the artistic and professional side, but equally passionately, I feel very strongly about being a citizen, and especially now, because we know we cherish democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, and it's a bit under threat. So, that's a long diversion. I apologize.